The girl with crimson-red eyes and that ever-composed expression gave a small wave, standing just a few steps from their table. Her cloak was different now, stitched with protective runes and lined with a faint shimmer of enchanted thread. A spellbook was fastened securely to her hip, and a long staff of silver wood rested across her back. "It's good to see you again," Serena said, walking toward them. Lyra looked between the two. "Friend of yours." "We share a class at the Royal Academy," Inigo said. "Didn't know you were an adventurer too." "I registered recently," Serena said with a nod. "I wasn't sure I'd pursue it seriously, but then I saw your names on the board." Inigo folded his arms, eyes narrowing slightly. "You do know what you're signing up for, right? Hollowwood. Minotaurs. It's not a beginner dungeon." "I know," Serena said calmly. "That's why I want to help." Lyra raised an eyebrow. "What's your specialization?" Serena smiled faintly. "I can heal." Inigo blinked again. "Wait, seriously? I'm trained in both restoration and elemental casting. Technically, I'm listed under sorcerer, but my mana affinity allows me to cast high-level fire spells and intermediate-class healing magic." Lyra leaned forward, suddenly interested. "So, you can burn things and patch us up after?" "Exactly. Why didn't you say anything about this at school?" Inigo asked. Serena shrugged slightly. "No one asked. And besides, I don't exactly advertise that I can toss a firestorm or reverse a bleeding wound." Alira, who had remained respectfully silent until now, finally stepped forward. "You would complete our team, Serena of the Royal Academy. We are about to confront beasts born of rage and darkness. Your gifts would be welcome." Serena gave her a modest bow. "Then I'll do my best." Inigo exchanged a glance with Lyra. She gave him the smallest of nods. "All right," he said. "You're in." Serena smiled, a rare but genuine expression. "Thank you." "Don't thank us yet," Inigo said, grabbing his satchel. "We still have to survive this." The four of them headed straight back to Guildmaster Thorn's desk to finalize their party registration. The old warrior looked up from his paperwork as the group approached. "Thought you two were still short," he grunted. "We were," Lyra said, motioning to Alira and Serena. "But we're full now." Thorn gave the Crusader and the Sorceress each a long, appraising look. Crusader with frontline defense enchantments and a Sorcerer-Healer hybrid. "That'll do." He reached into a drawer and pulled out a set of crystal seals. Each one bore the crest of the guild and glowed faintly with embedded mana threads. "These are your clearance permits. Authorized for the Hollowwood sector. If city guards or forest patrols question you, just show these." He handed each of them a seal. "You've got 6 hours until sundown," Thorn added. "I suggest you get moving. Weather's been rough lately and terrain out there can change fast." "Appreciate it," Inigo said, tucking the permit into his coat. "We'll be back with fewer minotaurs in the world." Thorn snorted. "Just come back in one piece." The team gathered outside the guild hall, already drawing glances from other adventurers. It wasn't every day that 4 gold-ranked members walked together, especially with one of them being an academy sorcerer. Alira adjusted the strap of her kite shield and checked the edge of her longsword. "I have a supply satchel with minor wards and health elixirs if needed. I have high-efficiency mana potions," Serena added, "and a scroll of spatial anchoring in case the cave distorts." Lyra slung her bow over her shoulder. "I brought food." Inigo smirked, loading fresh rounds into his Desert Eagle. "And I brought firepower." The group moved quickly through the western quarter of Eldrith. The city's edge gave way to cobbled trade roads, then dirt paths and finally to forest trails carved out by wagons and merchant caravans. The trees grew denser as they walked, the air turning damp and cool with the scent of moss and pine. After nearly 2 hours of steady hiking, they reached the first sign of trouble. A wagon lay overturned at the side of the trail, its contents, barrels, crates and ripped cloth, scattered across the ground. Tracks in the dirt told a story of panic. Clawed hooves. Deep furrows. Blood stains. Serena knelt and touched the trail. "This is fresh. Maybe a few hours old." "Alira?" Inigo asked. The Crusader raised her shield and scanned the nearby woods. "I sense nothing within 100 meters, but we should remain alert. This wasn't a random ambush. They're pushing closer to the road." "We're getting close to the lair," Lyra said. The old quarry trail should be just ahead. And it was. 10 minutes later, they emerged into a clearing surrounded by jagged stone ridges. A steep descent opened into what was once a mining site, long abandoned. Now nature had reclaimed it with moss-covered stone walls and vines coiled around rusted mining gear. At the center stood the entrance to the cave. It yawned like the mouth of some dead god, dark, wide, and silent. A few bones littered the ground nearby. Broken swords. Splintered shields. A cracked helmet. Looks inviting, Inigo muttered. No ambient magic, Serena said, frowning. Which is concerning. There should be some residual traces from all the monsters living inside. They're suppressing their presence, Alira said. Or something stronger is cloaking them. Great, Lyra muttered. We're up against intelligent cows now. Inigo holstered his sidearm and reached for his goggles, pulling them over his eyes. The enchantment activated with a tap, feeding him thermal readings. Let's go in slow. Formation. Alira up front, I'll take left flank, Lyra on the right. Serena middle, support role. They all nodded. Alira drew her sword and stepped into the cave, shield raised high. One by one they followed, the light of the forest fading behind them. The darkness ahead felt ancient. Alive. As they walked, the cave grew colder. Walls of damp limestone closed in on either side, and the ground became uneven, slick with condensation and the remnants of old mining rails. Strange markings etched into the stone glowed faintly in the dark, primitive carvings not of human origin. Inigo tapped Lyra's shoulder. Scan the ceilings too. They like ambushes. I know, she said, bow already raised. Behind them, Serena hummed under her breath, a soft melodic chant that bathed them in gentle white light. Her healing aura, passive and ever-present, gave a calm focus to their steps. You've done this before? Alira asked over her shoulder. A few times, Serena said. Mostly solo missions. But nothing like this. You're doing well, Alira said. Stay close. They turned a corner and then stopped. The air changed. It smelled of iron and ash. At the far end of the tunnel, the stone opened into a wider chamber lit by bioluminescent fungi and glowing crystal growths. A pile of bones rested in the center. Some fresh, some shattered. The sound came next. A heavy snort. A clatter of hooves on stone. They all readied their weapons. This is it. The tension in the air was palpable, a silence so heavy it threatened to choke them. The moment they stepped into the cavernous chamber, the ambient warmth of the outside world vanished. In its place came a suffocating chill and the oppressive scent of decayed flesh and scorched bone. Then they heard it. Fucking. Not just one or two sounds, dozens, maybe even more. 50 figures emerged from the gloom ahead, their bony forms illuminated by the sickly blue glow of the crystals embedded in the cave walls. They towered over ordinary men, their skeletal frames thicker and bulkier than any human remains. These were minotaurs once, now twisted undead hulks, each easily over 8 feet tall, horns jutting from their cracked skulls, and empty sockets glowing with an unholy green fire. Skeleton minotaurs, Serena said, eyes widening in recognition. Animated through dark magic. This is necromancy, strong necromancy. And 50 of them, Lyra muttered. That's a bit more than I expected. They're fast, Alira warned, raising her kite shield and bracing her stance. Watch their charge. Serena, Inigo said, his voice calm despite the rising danger. Burn them. The sorceress nodded, already stepping forward. She lifted her silverwood staff and began chanting in a soft, melodic cadence. Glyphs glowed from the runes carved into her cloak and spellbook, lighting up with an eerie orange hue as mana gathered in her palm. Her voice rose, no longer gentle but commanding. A flare burst from her staff's tip, exploding overhead and lighting the entire cavern in searing orange light. Infernal Nova. A fireball the size of a cartwheel soared through the air and slammed into the front ranks of the undead. The explosion rocked the chamber, heat waves washing over them as skeletal limbs flew in all directions. The blast incinerated at least 10 of the minotaurs on contact, flames licking at the rest as they stumbled from the shock. The others roared, or tried to, though the sound came out as hollow, breathless snarls. Yow! Alira shouted, charging through the fire. She crashed into the front lines like a divine hammer, her shield glowing with mirrored light. Her sword swept low, cleaving through brittle bones and snapping spines in a blur of silver. Every movement was practiced, every step heavy with conviction. The Paladin Crusader's battle aura shimmered with golden sparks as she slashed, blocked and rammed. Lyra, positioned at the rear right, already had her bow drawn. "Targeting stragglers," she called out. 3 arrows flew in rapid succession, each one enchanted with kinetic tags. They slammed into the skulls of charging undead with pinpoint accuracy, cracking bone and embedding themselves deep in the eye sockets. "Reloading," she muttered, reaching for another arrow without ever dropping her aim. Inigo, meanwhile, stood at the rear left, arms crossed and leaning casually against a mossy boulder. He watched with amusement as Serina's second spell, a sweeping flame arc, burst across the skeletons like a whip, lighting another group ablaze. Alira was a storm of steel at the front, and Lyra was basically sniping from the sidelines like death's own archer. "Do I even need to be here?" he muttered under his breath. "You're doing great," Lyra shouted, clearly overhearing. "Real team effort." Yeah, he said, tapping open his shop menu. The ethereal blue interface of the Freedom Shop flickered before him, accessible only to him, the system's exclusive user. He scrolled through quickly, eyes skimming past rifles, grenades and enchanted knives. Then he saw it. RPG-7 anti-tank launcher modified. Cost 5,000 tokens. Includes 1x high-explosive anti-tank round. Inigo didn't hesitate. He tapped buy. A few mana particles shimmered in the air, and with a soft click the launcher materialized in his hands. Long, sleek and cold to the touch, the RPG-7 gleamed with light modifications. A reinforced casing, stabilized grip and a rune-lined scope for accuracy. Lyra glanced over her shoulder and grinned when she saw it. "Oh no. You brought the big toy." "Had to," Inigo replied. "This one's going to need it." Because just then the real threat stepped into view. The ground trembled with its arrival. It ducked beneath the stone arch and emerged into the chamber, easily towering over all the others. At first glance it looked like a massive boulder walking on 2 legs. But as it stepped forward, the details became clear. Thick muscle bound by armor-plated bones, a cracked horn that jutted like a spear from its forehead, and in its hands, an axe longer than a wagon. It was at least 3 stories tall. The other skeletons immediately backed away, forming a semicircle around the beast like subordinates to their general. The glow in this one's eyes wasn't just green. It was molten, burning with crimson and violet pulses, as though something more than dark magic fueled its rage. "That's not normal," Serina said, voice tense now. "No kidding," Inigo muttered, hoisting the launcher to his shoulder. Alira took 1 step forward, but he stopped her with a hand signal. "Hold position. This one's mine." The team watched as Inigo walked forward slowly, not running, not hiding, just standing with that same lazy confidence he always had. The giant skeletal minotaur let out a low growl, hefting its axe back. And Inigo smirked. "I hope you like fireworks." He squeezed the trigger. FWWWW. The rocket roared through the air, leaving a trail of fire and smoke as it crossed the chamber. Time seemed to slow as the explosive arc traced toward its target. The monster raised its axe, perhaps out of instinct or arrogance. It didn't matter. The rocket hit square in the chest, and the explosion shattered the silence. Flame and shrapnel erupted in a geyser of force, blowing back nearby undead and throwing up chunks of rock and dust. The shockwave knocked several of the remaining minotaurs flat. For a moment the chamber went still as smoke billowed outward. When it cleared, the massive skeletal beast was nothing but broken pieces. Its torso had been obliterated. The cracked axe lay to one side, the minotaur's skull rolled to the other. Alira blinked. "That was overkill," Serina finished. "What kind of magic is that?" "That, ladies, is the magic of freedom," Inigo grinned. The debris from the shattered minotaur titan still smoldered as the 4 adventurers stood at the center of the cavern, catching their breath. Shards of bone crumbled underfoot as Serina inspected the glowing fragments with a frown. The necromantic energy that once pulsed within them had finally begun to dissipate. "Mana's thinning," she murmured. "But it's not gone. The deeper we go, the more concentrated it'll get." "That thing wasn't the boss," Inigo said, slinging the now empty RPG-7 across his back before it disintegrated into system particles. It was just a gatekeeper. Typical for a dungeon. I didn't expect this to end so quickly. Lyra stepped beside him, wiping soot from her bowstring. This is expected of a dungeon. Enemies will get stronger as we get deeper. I know, he replied, withdrawing his M4 carbine from his inventory. I hope that this is just a quick dungeon raid. With a few quick checks, he toggled the weapon's rune safety off and loaded a fresh mag. The rifle, matte black with subtle glowing glyphs along the barrel, hummed softly, his own modified version, courtesy of the Freedom Shop's upgrades. A small slot on the receiver allowed him to directly channel mana into the chambered rounds, enhancing each bullet with raw energy. His Desert Eagle hung at his side, freshly polished and loaded. Standard setup. Efficient. Reliable. Alira, still at the front of the group, nodded silently and resumed her forward position. Serena cast a soft cleansing wave to dissipate the smoke ahead and lit another floating light to guide their way. They moved deeper into the cave. This far in, the structure of the dungeon changed. The walls no longer resembled mere limestone. Instead, they were blackened and charred as if burned in ancient fire. Strange sigils marked the surface, glowing faintly with eerie blue and red tones. The temperature dropped again and the air grew heavier. Inigo glanced at the sigils and activated his goggles' glyph scanning overlay. Runes, he muttered. Enchantment warding. Some are suppressors, others are amplifiers. Someone or something wants the magic here controlled, not free-flowing. You think it's a sorcerer? Lyra asked. Serena shook her head. This kind of suppression magic? It's ancient. Might be Minotaur shamans that set this up centuries ago. Or worse, something that controls them. As they continued on, the sound of distant hooves returned. This time it wasn't 50. It was 10. But they were different. The minotaurs that appeared next were larger than the skeletal ones they had faced earlier, but not undead. These were alive, muscle-bound, fur-covered monsters wearing spiked armor, their eyes glowing with cold intelligence. Each one wielded weapons, axes, spears, and even a crude tower shield made of stitched-together bones. Alira raised her shield immediately. These are warlords. I count 10, Lyra whispered. They're organizing. Inigo nodded slowly, lifting his M4 and placing a finger on the trigger. His mana flared briefly, blue light pulsing from his palm into the rifle's magazine. The entire weapon shimmered. Time for a little overdrive. He aimed and fired. The shot cracked through the air with the force of thunder, the enhanced round spiraling into one of the Minotaur's shoulder. The impact tore through its armor and knocked it backward several feet, crashing against a wall and crumpling with a pained snort. Alira, go, he barked. The Crusader rushed in, shield braced, and clashed against the front line of the monsters. One swung a hammer at her, but she ducked under it, slammed her shield into its knee, and brought her sword down across its face in one fluid motion. Serena began her chant, holding her staff high. Cleansing flame, radiant flare. A circle of golden fire exploded beneath 3 of the beasts, searing them with purifying energy. 2 howled in agony and staggered. The 3rd fell to its knees, smoke rising from its chest. Lyra was already moving along the left flank, launching arrows that glowed with kinetic sigils. Each bolt struck with more than physical force. They detonated like pressure bursts, causing shockwaves that threw the Minotaurs off balance. Inigo didn't stop firing. The M4 thundered again and again. Every 5th shot he infused with a burst of mana, causing the rounds to pierce deeper or explode mid-impact. He moved in tandem with Lyra, covering her side as she moved. 7 down. Alira shouted. 3 remained, forming a triangle. They roared as one, and then charged together, shoulder to shoulder like a barbarian phalanx. Inigo dashed forward, grabbing a frag grenade from his belt, channeled mana into it and lobbed it dead center. Back. The explosion boomed like a cannon. Rock splinters flew, smoke clouded the air, and when it cleared, 2 of the Minotaurs were torn apart. The last one lay groaning, crushed under debris. Silence returned. Clear, Alira announced, sword dripping with black blood. Inigo lowered his rifle. That went well. Too well, Serena said, panting slightly. Her eyes narrowed. These weren't just guards. They were a test. Lyra looked around. So what's next? The real boss. As if in answer, the floor beneath them rumbled. The stone shook violently, and a section of the far wall cracked open like an ancient door. Beyond it was a staircase, descending even deeper, lit by red-orange light pulsing like the breath of something asleep. Inigo stepped toward it. "Looks like our invitation." Alira turned. "We can rest for 5 minutes. But after that, we press on," Serena finished. They sat briefly by the wall, reapplying salves, reloading gear, and drinking from their flasks. Lyra handed out small ration bars, while Serena refilled her mana with a high-efficiency potion. Alira polished her blade with slow, reverent strokes. Inigo rechecked his Desert Eagle, chambering around with a soft click. "Whatever's down there, we end it today." "Agreed," Alira said. They rose together and stepped toward the stairs, the torch-like pulses below growing stronger with each step. As they descended, the sound of drums echoed up to meet them, deep, steady, and ancient. The real battle had yet to begin. And none of them intended to turn back. The blast from the RPG still echoed faintly in the cave walls, fragments of bone and ash littering the ground like a desecrated battlefield. Smoke curled lazily from the scorched earth as Inigo stepped back, slinging the now-expended launcher onto his back. The others gathered beside him, cautiously surveying the ruin left behind. "Still in one piece?" he asked, voice light. Lyra gave him a playful nudge with her elbow. "You're ridiculous. That was enough firepower to level a gatehouse." Serena was more composed, her crimson eyes scanning the cavern. "No ambient necromantic mana remains. That blast severed the primary anchor." Alira, however, was not smiling. She approached the shattered remains of the Minotaur general and crouched beside what remained of its skull. Her hand hovered just above the bone, and she murmured a quiet prayer under her breath. "That wasn't just brute necromancy," she said. "Something stronger animated it. That aura. It wasn't just hate. It was purpose." Inigo cocked a brow. "You think it was sent?" Alira nodded grimly. "Perhaps not sent but bound, forced to protect something deeper." "Well then," Inigo muttered, reloading his Desert Eagle with mana-infused rounds, "I suppose we're not done yet." The 4 of them regrouped at the edge of the chamber where a tunnel sloped deeper into darkness. Unlike the earlier passages, this one pulsed faintly with red light, casting long, jagged shadows on the uneven stone walls. Lyra adjusted her quiver. "No turning back now." "Agreed," said Serena, tightening the grip on her staff. "We've come too far." Alira took point again, shield raised. "Stay sharp." They descended in silence, each step taking them farther from the surface and deeper into the forgotten veins of the world. The tunnel twisted unnaturally, like it had grown rather than been carved. Stalactites jutted like claws from the ceiling, and occasional carvings in ancient, unreadable runes lined the walls. Inigo's night vision goggles lit the path in shades of emerald. His M4 carbine hung comfortably against his chest. A soft blue light traced down the barrel. "Ready." Suddenly the tunnel widened again. Another chamber, but this one was different. Cracked stone pillars loomed like broken sentinels and scattered debris lined the perimeter. At the center stood an altar made of obsidian, slick with something black and shimmering. Hovering just above it was a crystal the size of a watermelon, pulsating faintly. Serena froze. "That's a conduit." "Conduit?" Lyra echoed. "It's storing ambient mana from the area," Serena explained, eyes narrowing. "Feeding it somewhere." Inigo studied it. "Maybe feeding someone?" The answer came with a rumble. Not from the walls this time, but from beneath them. The ground cracked. A snarl echoed through the chamber, deep and guttural. From the far end of the room, a hidden wall of stone slid open with an agonizing groan. Emerging from the shadows was another minotaur, but this one wasn't skeletal. It was flesh and blood. Muscles rippled beneath dark fur. Arcane tattoos glowed faintly across its chest and arms. Its horns were etched with golden metal bands, and its eyes. They were intelligent. A dark, bitter intelligence. It wore crude armor cobbled from steel, bones, and hide. Its right hand clutched a double-headed axe, runes etched into the blade. "Minotaur warlord," Alira whispered. The beast stepped forward, sniffing the air. It spoke, not in human tongue, but the meaning struck them anyway. "You've come for prey." It charged. Alira moved first, shield up, intercepting the charge with a booming clash that sent her sliding back several feet. Lyra, right flank. Inigo shouted. I'm on it. She leapt to the side, arrows already flying. The first two bounced off the warlord's armor, but the third, a mana-piercing tip, sank into its thigh. It roared but didn't slow. Serena raised both hands, chanting quickly. Flame pillars. 3 columns of fire erupted from the ground beneath the Minotaur, searing its legs and chest. The beast howled, staggering. Inigo raised his M4 and opened fire. The enchanted bullets slammed into its shoulder and chest, mana cracking through armor like lightning. The warlord recoiled, blood splattering across the altar, but it wasn't finished. It lifted the axe and hurled it. Down. Inigo yelled, grabbing Serena and pulling her to the ground. The axe flew overhead, embedding itself into the far wall with a deafening crack. But that wasn't the end of it. The beast clenched its fists, and the axe ripped itself free, flying back into its hand with unnatural force. It's bound to him, Alira growled. The Minotaur surged forward again, faster this time. Alira stood firm. Aegis light. Her shield exploded with radiant energy, blinding the creature just long enough for her to duck beneath its swing and slam her blade into its ribs. Blood spurted. The warlord screamed and backhanded her, sending her flying into a pillar. Alira! Serena cried. Inigo didn't hesitate. He toggled his fire mode. Full auto. Mana flared from the M4's barrel as he unloaded, each bullet glowing with volatile power. The rounds tore into the warlord's chest, forcing it back step by step, but it didn't fall. Not yet. It turned its gaze on Inigo, and for a brief moment they locked eyes. Then it charged again. I got you. Lyra shouted, jumping between them. She dropped to a crouch and fired a point-blank arrow directly into the creature's eye. It reeled. That was enough. Serena raised her staff, glowing with crimson flame. Inferno Lance. A concentrated spear of fire burst from her palm and struck the beast's chest, igniting the runes there. It screamed in agony and stumbled. Inigo stepped forward. Desert Eagle drawn. Let's end this. One shot. Mana infused. It tore through the beast's skull. The warlord fell, like a felled tree, crashing to the ground with an earth-shaking thud. Silence. Then slowly breath returned. Alira groaned, pulling herself up with help from Serena. Inigo holstered his pistol and exhaled. Well, that was tougher. Lyra collapsed onto a rock. That was insane. Serena walked toward the altar. The crystal had stopped glowing. It's done, she said. The conduit's broken. No more reinforcements. Inigo stepped beside her, watching the faint flicker of light fade from the gem. Let's mark this place, he said. Come back later for a full sweep. But for now, we need to rest. And so they did, amidst ruin, blood, and a hard-won victory. The scent of ash still lingered in the air, a grim reminder of the skeletal titan that Inigo had blown to pieces only minutes ago. Charred bones and broken horns littered the cavern floor like a battlefield long abandoned, and yet the oppressive silence that followed didn't offer comfort. If anything, it felt like the calm before something worse. Their boots echoed against the stone as the team pressed deeper into the dungeon, cautious and silent. The tunnels narrowed, then widened again into jagged halls supported by ancient beams and rough-cut stone arches. The light from Serena's hovering lumen orbs barely reached the end of the corridor ahead, and the magical glow they cast only deepened the shadows around them. Inigo held his M4 carbine low, trigger finger resting loosely, barrel aimed at the dark. He walked beside Alira while Lyra and Serena stayed close behind. His Desert Eagle holstered at his side, ready for close encounters. This is further than most reports reached, Alira noted, her voice calm but laced with tension. The other parties that tried to clear this place never made it past the third chamber. Which one are we in now? Lyra asked, knocking an arrow and scanning the ceiling. Fifth, Serena answered. Inigo grunted. Love it when we go off the map. They pressed on in tense silence, weapons ready, every sense sharpened. The path sloped downward. Faint vibrations ran through the soles of their boots. Then the tremors returned. But this time they were heavier, rhythmic, like the heartbeat of something massive, buried beneath stone. Everyone stopped. A gust of wind blew from ahead. But it wasn't wind, it was breath. Hot, rancid, and laced with decay. From the depths, a sound emerged. A slow dragging growl. Then the shadows moved. No, something within the shadows moved. The stone wall at the end of the chamber shifted. Cracks appeared in the darkness. Two enormous red eyes blinked open, glowing like dying embers. Then the creature stepped forward, and the very ground shook under its weight. It wasn't just a minotaur. It was a demon shaped like one. Horned and covered in obsidian black fur. Its body was wrapped in what looked like molten metal armor fused to its flesh. Jagged runes burned across its limbs. Its hooves left trails of scorched stone with every step. And in its hand, it held a great sword forged of bone and hellfire, larger than any weapon Inigo had ever seen. By the gods! Alira whispered. The monster snarled and lunged. Scatter! Inigo shouted. The beast slammed its sword down. The ground exploded, sending shards of stone flying like shrapnel. Inigo dove left, barely avoiding being cleaved in half. Alira raised her shield just in time to absorb a shockwave that sent her skidding back several feet. Lyra rolled to the side and loosed an arrow. It struck the creature's chest and bounced off harmlessly. Serena raised her staff. Flame lance. A burning javelin of fire shot forward and struck the creature directly in the face. The flames dispersed. The creature didn't even flinch. It swung again. This time, its sword caught a stone pillar and sheared it in half like butter. The explosion of dust and stone forced the party to fall back again. Inigo cursed under his breath, ducking behind a rock. What the hell is this thing? It's not a natural monster, Serena gasped. That's demonic infusion, layers of curse magic. It's not undead or beast. It's something else entirely. Great, Inigo muttered, flipping the fire mode on his M4 to burst. How do we kill it? I don't know if we can, Serena said quietly. Alira was already charging again, glowing with divine aura. She struck the beast with full force, shield first. The blow connected, but the beast didn't even budge. It backhanded her across the chamber. Her body crashed into a wall with a sickening crack. Alira! Lyra shouted. I'm fine, came a strained voice. Lyra fired another volley. Her arrows sparked against the creature's molten armor and deflected. Serena, we need healing on Alira. Inigo called, opening fire. The M4 rounds struck the creature's shoulder, neck, and chest. He infused the bullets with mana, each shot glowing faintly blue. But still, the beast came. It raised its sword again and charged. It moved faster than anything that size should. Inigo barely rolled away. The sword struck where he had just been, exploding the ground into a crater. His ears rang. Serena ran toward Alira, staff raised. She began chanting her healing spell. Greater restoration. The rune on her staff flickered, and then snapped. The magic sputtered out. What? She whispered, stunned. Try again. Lyra yelled. Serena raised her staff again, focused harder. Her voice shook. Greater restoration. Nothing. No response, she whispered, her hands trembling. Something is blocking it. Like the mana itself is being rejected. Inigo fired again, short bursts, targeted shots. But the bullets melted on impact. His heart dropped. We can't hurt it, he said aloud. Nothing's working. Not steel, not arrows, not fire. The demon minotaur roared and swept its sword in a wide arc. Lyra dove, but a wave of heat followed the swing. She cried out, her leg grazed and scorched. Alira's out. Lyra's hurt. Serena can't heal. Inigo looked at the monster, its burning eyes fixed on him now. And for the first time since arriving in this world, he wasn't sure they could win. Everyone, fall back, he shouted. But there was no retreat path. The tunnel behind them had collapsed from the earlier impacts. The demon was hurting them, pushing them back toward a corner chamber. Trapping them. Serena stood beside him, panting. Inigo. I can try something. A ward to stall it. But it'll take time. How much? 10 seconds. We don't have 10 seconds. The demon roared again and began charging. Inigo gritted his teeth. He stepped forward and raised his M4. Then switched to his Desert Eagle. The weight of the pistol felt reassuring in his hands. He loaded a single mana-infused round. The strongest he could produce. aimed, waited, then fired. The bullet flew straight into the demon's eye. It exploded, blinding light flashing in its socket. The beast recoiled, screaming. Now! Inigo shouted. Serena, do it. Serena dropped to her knees, drew a magic circle and began chanting. Runes glowed, interlocking around her. Lyra pulled Elira behind a large rock, gritting through her burned leg. The demon recovered fast. Too fast. It roared and lunged. The spell wasn't done. Inigo, stall it. Serena screamed. He charged. Straight at the monster. No plans. No backup. Just him and a half-loaded desert eagle. He slid beneath its legs and fired again at the knee. Another detonation. The joint buckled but held. The beast swung down. He dove back, barely avoiding a death blow. The pressure of the swing sent rocks tumbling. Serena finished the chant. Aegis lock. A glowing dome of silver light expanded around them just as the sword came down. Clang. The impact cracked the barrier but didn't break it. They were safe for now. But Serena collapsed, drained. I can't do another, she whispered. That's it. Inigo stared at the beast outside the shield, pacing like a predator just beyond reach. They had minutes at best. Then they would die. And for the first time he wasn't sure they could survive what came next. The Aegis lock dome pulsed faintly, cracks splintering across its silvery surface like a wineglass ready to shatter. Every heartbeat was another tick off the countdown. Elira was barely conscious, propped against the wall with a hand clutching her ribs. Lyra gritted through the pain in her burned leg, trying not to cry out. Serena's eyes were half-lidded, drained from overcasting magic far beyond her current reserves. And Inigo? He was the only one still standing. Outside the barrier, the demon Minotaur circled like a siege weapon come to life, its eyes blazing with violent intent. The armor fused to its flesh still glowed with the remains of cursed heat, and every exhale filled the air with the scent of sulfur and death. Inigo inhaled sharply, fingers tightening around the grip of his desert eagle. His M4 was nearly empty. His mana reserves were low. But worst of all, his team couldn't keep fighting. If he didn't act now, they were dead. All right, he muttered to himself, opening the Freedom OS interface in his mind. Let's stop screwing around. With a flick of thought, he pulled up the inventory of his Freedom system. Then he found it. Tracked combat drone, unit designation, WN7 Wheeler. Loadout, twin 5.56mm miniguns, 2,500 rounds. Micromissile pod, 6 rockets. Features. Combat AI, infrared sensors, auto-retreat, deployable smoke, self-destruct system. He didn't hesitate. Summon. A flash of blue light shimmered inside the dome just behind him. A mechanical hum filled the chamber. Treads spun gently against the ground. Twin barrels mounted on a low-slung chassis rotated in place. The matte black drone extended from its folded stasis mode, armor plates sliding into combat position. Red indicator lights blinked to life along its sides. WN7 Wheeler activated. Awaiting orders. Wheeler, Inigo whispered, allowing a grin to form. Get out there and raise hell. With a hydraulic hiss, the drone rolled to the edge of the barrier. A circular lens rotated as its forward camera calibrated, locking onto the demonic minotaur outside. The barrier broke. The moment the silver light shattered into sparks, the beast roared and lunged. But Wheeler was faster. The drone's twin miniguns spun up with a screaming whir, then thundered to life. Brrr! A wall of 5.56mm rounds tore into the creature's chest and arms, peppering molten armor with relentless fire. Each bullet was infused with a light arcane charge, designed to disrupt cursed energy. The beast recoiled slightly, shielding its face with one massive forearm. And then came the second volley. Micromissile pod, engaged. With a chirp of targeting, the 6 high-explosive rockets launched in rapid succession. Fwish, fwish, fwish. The chamber exploded in flame and force. 3 of the rockets hit dead center. 2 struck its right shoulder and chest, blowing off part of the fused plate. 1 clipped the creature's leg, detonating with enough force to knock it off balance. Yeah. Inigo shouted, leveling his M4 and joining the assault. He dashed to the side, using Wheeler's barrage as cover. Firing in short, mana-infused bursts, he focused on the cracked armor plates now exposed by the rockets. Every shot glowed faintly, amplifying with arcane energy and slamming into the demon's side with echoing cracks. The beast howled in frustration, swinging its massive sword at the drone. Wheeler reversed, treads squealing just as the blade came down. It missed by inches. Auto-retreat engaged. Deploying smoke. Now. A cloud of thick gray fog blasted outward from the drone's flanks, blinding the creature momentarily. Inigo used the cover. He broke into a sprint, sliding beside the stunned Lyra. "You still with me?" She nodded weakly, grabbing his arm. "I can still shoot if I get a clear line." "You'll get one," he said. Wheeler's keeping it busy. Behind them the smoke began to clear, and the demon roared again, stepping through the mist, its sword dragging sparks across the floor. Its left arm was limp now, part of the shoulder blown open from the missile volley. But it was still alive. Still enraged. Inigo pulled up the interface again, cursing under his breath. "Need more. I need something that'll drop this bastard for good." He scrolled, rifles, explosives. None of it big enough. Then he found it. M777 155mm towed howitzer. Cost 18,000 tokens. Payload, standard high explosive rounds, direct fire capable. Instructions, manual fire. Yank the cord. Say goodbye. His eyes widened. "That'll do. Purchase confirmed." Behind him the sound of air distorting signaled the weapon's arrival. It wasn't subtle. The M777 didn't appear gently. It slammed into existence with a thunderous crash, the long barrel clanking against stone as arcane runes lit along its length. The howitzer was fitted with stabilizers and had a preloaded shell glowing with condensed energy. Wheeler wheeled back, its miniguns clicking dry. "Fall back, buddy," Inigo said. "I'll take it from here." He climbed onto the firing platform, gripping the heavy pull cord linked to the trigger mechanism. The demon, sensing something was wrong, charged again, full speed. Just a little closer. 10 meters. Yow. Inigo yanked the cord. Boom. The sound was deafening. Pure thunder ripped through the cavern as the shell fired point blank. A white-hot streak of energy shot forward, crossing the short distance between cannon and beast in a blink. The shell hit square in the demon's chest. The explosion that followed was cataclysmic. The chamber lit in a blinding flash, shockwaves ripping through stone, vaporizing debris. A massive crater formed where the demon once stood. Flames licked upward toward the ceiling. Cracks spidered along the cave walls. Dust and smoke enveloped everything. For a few long seconds there was only silence. Then the smoke began to clear. The demon was gone. All that remained was a smoldering ruin, its sword snapped in two, its fused armor now cracked and scattered. Inigo slid down from the cannon, panting. He turned to the others. Alira was stirring again, blinking groggily. Lyra raised a thumb. Serena, still exhausted, gave a weak but thankful smile. Inigo looked at Wheeler, then the crater. "That," he said, "is what you call freedom. But don't rest easy right now. The Minotaur is still alive." The silence that followed the explosion was deceptive. Inigo stood atop the M777 howitzer, his heart hammering in his chest, smoke still curling from the cannon's barrel. Around him the cave was scorched black. The crater where the demon had stood glowed with residual heat. Wheeler stood nearby, quiet for the first time, its twin barrels lowered as if it too believed it was over. Lyra managed a shaky breath. "Did we win?" "No, we didn't just yet," Inigo replied. He could say for sure as he knew when enemies would be killed. It will be flashed from his system. Then the earth rumbled. A tremor, deeper than before, pulsed through the stone floor. Alira stirred from where she lay against the wall, her bruised eyes widening. Serena gripped her staff weakly. Wheeler's sensors twitched, red lights flashing again. "No," Serena whispered. "It can't be." The crater erupted. A molten claw burst from the rubble, followed by a snarling roar so deep it shook the very bones in their bodies. Obsidian muscle and glowing runes reknit themselves. Fire leaked like blood from fractured armor. The beast rose again, reformed, enraged, and worse than before. It towered taller now, its horns longer, its form more twisted by the magic that tethered it to the dungeon's corrupted heart. "You've got to be kidding me," Inigo breathed. "That killed anything else 10 times over." Serena's voice shook. "I told you, It's bound to the dungeon. The core keeps resurrecting it. Until we sever that link. Inigo gritted his teeth. He pulled open the Freedom OS interface in his mind, sweat beading on his temple. Fine. If the last shot was a warning. He navigated the shop menu, filtering through weapons, his fingers moving with grim precision. RPG-7 Ordnance, high explosive anti-tank shell. Cost 300 tokens. Purchase confirmed. M777 155mm towed howitzer. Reload. 1xe round. Cost 700 tokens. Purchase confirmed. A thrum of light behind him marked the arrival of both. A rocket shell glowing faintly orange and a fresh artillery round clunking into the preloaded tray beside the howitzer. He grabbed the RPG-7 from his back, slammed the shell into the launcher with a click and hissed under his breath. Wheeler, cover me. The drone whirred to life, turrets spinning up again. Smoke pods deployed, bathing the cavern in thick cover as the demon shrieked and slammed its blade into the ground. The blast sent shockwaves through the mist. Inigo ran. He moved like a shadow, weaving through broken pillars and scorched stone. The RPG felt like a steel spear in his grip. The smoke cleared just enough to see the demon's burning eye. He fired. Whoosh. The rocket streaked through the air, spinning, then slammed into the creature's exposed abdomen with a flash of heat and steel. The demon screamed. One of its legs buckled and it sank to a knee. Armor cracked open. Runes sputtered. Its grip on its molten blade loosened. Inigo didn't stop. He turned, sprinted for the M777. Behind him, the demon began to rise again. Hell no you don't. He jumped onto the cannon's platform and jammed the he shell into the breech. He spun the barrel, aligning it with terrifying precision, directly into the glowing rupture left by the RPG. Say goodbye, he growled. He yanked the cord. Boom. The cavern lit up as if a star had detonated. A shockwave blasted outward, flattening everything within 30 meters. The heat from the point-blank explosion ignited stone, and molten slag rained across the walls. The air turned white-hot and deafening, drowning even the demon's final scream. Then silence. Real silence. No growl. No regeneration. No magic. When the smoke cleared, there was no body. Just a crater, twice as large as before, scorched black and glassy at the edges. The air smelled of ozone and sulfur. The fused runes that had once lit the walls with infernal glow were now cold. The sword had melted into two broken lumps of metal. A prompt appeared before Inigo's eyes. Dungeon cleared, core severed. Boss defeated. Tokens received, 10,000 tokens. Inigo dropped to his knees, his lungs heaving. His hands trembled as he slowly stood and turned back to his team. Lyra had pushed herself up against the wall, wide-eyed. Is it finally dead? He nodded once. It's dead. Serena let out a sob, not of grief but of sheer exhaustion and relief. Alira, though bruised and battered, managed to smile faintly. That's the craziest thing I've ever seen. Yeah. Inigo patted Wheeler, which had powered down again beside the crater. But it worked. The walk back was slow. They moved as one, supporting each other, navigating the now quiet tunnels of the dungeon. There were no more enemies. No traps. The halls felt abandoned now, the way they were before the core was corrupted. At the dungeon's entrance, a team of guild scouts was waiting, eyes wide in disbelief as Inigo and his party emerged from the depths, smoke-covered, wounded but alive. Inigo, one of them asked. He gave a tired nod. You cleared it? The Minotaur. I did, Inigo confirmed. It wasn't easy thought. At the guild hall later that night, Guildmaster Thorn leaned forward across his desk, staring at the crater report. You fought a demonic Minotaur fused to the dungeon core. And this man right here was the one responsible for its demise? Inigo, now cleaned and bandaged, sat with a tired smirk. Yes I did, but it wasn't a single effort. My party members helped me defeat that thing. Thorn exhaled and chuckled. You're either the luckiest bastard I've ever seen, or the craziest. Either way, the dungeon's clear and that thing won't be coming back. We will process your rewards later. Anyways, drink on me. From behind him, Lyra grinned. I'll take it. Alira groaned. I'll take sleep. Serena leaned against the wall, still pale but smiling. Let's just be thankful we're all still alive. Inigo nodded, the weight of the last fight still lingering in his bones. It was one hell of an encounter. The cavern still echoed with the ringing silence that followed the monster's obliteration. Smoke and ash settled like snow, clinging to every jagged surface. The crater where the demon Minotaur had stood smoldered faintly, its fused armor now scattered shards of molten steel and bone. Nothing moved. No breath. No growl. No sound but the crackle of fading fire. They had won. Inigo stood in the center of the wreckage, brushing dust from his jacket. His left sleeve was torn from diving, his gloves scorched from the howitzer's recoil. Wheeler rumbled forward beside him, the combat drone whirring softly, its barrels cooling down. Its lights blinked yellow, standby mode. Lyra limped over, her leg still wrapped in a torn cloth strip soaked in healing salve. "Well," she said with a slow grin. "That was something." "No kidding," Inigo muttered, blowing smoke from his Desert Eagle's barrel before holstering it. "I'd say we should do this again sometime, but that'd make me sound insane." "You are insane," Lyra said, laughing softly. But in a good way. Behind them, Serena and Elira were still catching their breath. The sorceress sat slumped against a rock, fanning herself with her cloak and blinking in disbelief. Elira, despite cracked ribs and a bruised shoulder, had pulled herself upright. She stared at the remains of the demon, then at Inigo, then back again. "That," she whispered, "was not ordinary magic." Serena coughed lightly, voice hoarse. "Inigo, what was that?" Inigo glanced back at them. He scratched the back of his head, shrugging. "Just a little thing I call freedom." Serena frowned. "No, seriously. That wasn't any spell I've ever read about. It wasn't even runed magic. It was something else." Lyra nudged her. "This is normal for him." Elira walked closer, her expression unusually soft. "You didn't even chant. No sigils. No arcane focus." Inigo glanced at the howitzer, then at Wheeler, then down at his hands. He made a little fingergun motion. "I suppose I'm just talented." Serena scoffed, half amused, half incredulous. "That's not talent. That's reality breaking. You destroyed a demon reinforced with armor using a cannon that appeared from thin air." "Technically I bought it," Inigo muttered under his breath. "What?" "Nothing." Lyra leaned on her bow and grinned at the others. "Told you he was a gold rank for a reason." "I thought you were exaggerating," Elira admitted. "But this." She stared at the massive smoking crater again. "This is something else. This is power on a scale I've never seen. Not even from the academies." Inigo looked down at the rubble, then at the distant exit deeper into the dungeon. "Let's wrap this up before something else shows up." They moved carefully through the aftermath. Serena cast Minor, Detect Curse, pulses across the remains to ensure the demon's essence was gone. Nothing stirred. Whatever magic had sustained it was no longer present. Even the mana-rich air felt lighter now, less choked with oppressive weight. The chamber behind the demon's lair opened into a vault-like room. The walls were smooth, unlike the rest of the cave, with polished obsidian pillars and sigils that faintly pulsed with residual magic. At the far end stood an ancient pedestal, surrounded by 4 sealed chests and one massive stone sarcophagus, its lid already cracked from age. Elira stepped forward slowly. "This must be it. The treasure room the old reports mentioned." "Or a trap," Lyra added, cautiously knocking an arrow. Serena scanned the area, eyes glowing faintly. "There's magic here. But passive. Protective wards, not aggressive ones. They're old. Fading." Inigo stepped ahead and rested his hand on one of the chests. No explosion. No curse. Just dust. With a push he flipped it open. Inside were rows of gold coins, etched with the mark of the pre-Empire monarchy. A fortune untouched for centuries. The next chest held magical tomes and scrolls, bound in demon hide and enchanted leather. Another held artifacts, crystal rings, runic pendants, and a circlet of platinum laced with opal veins. The last chest, oddly, was filled with raw materials. Mana or refined mithril, even 2 vials of preserved dragon blood. Inigo whistled. Jackpot. But the true centerpiece was the sarcophagus. They gathered around it. Serena carefully placed her hand on the cracked lid. "It's not cursed. Just sealed. Old burial rites." Elira nodded. Let's open it together. It took all four of them to shift the heavy lid aside. There were gold coins, jewelry, and ancient relics, items clearly meant for ceremonial offerings, tribute hoarded during forgotten wars, or perhaps the lost savings of a fallen kingdom. But there was no body. No skeleton. Just wealth, piled in layered splendor. Inigo leaned over the sarcophagus and whistled. Now that's what I call a payday. Dozens of gold bars lay beneath the top layer of coins, stamped with sigils none of them recognized but gleaming with unmistakable purity. Set among them were gem-studded crowns, necklaces strung with polished moonstones, and bracelets that shimmered with embedded mana threads. Lyra blinked, momentarily forgetting the pain in her leg. Are we rich? Serena knelt beside the lute and gingerly picked up a large sapphire set in what appeared to be a ceremonial goblet. These aren't just valuable, they're historic. Some of these artifacts might date back to the early dynasties. Inigo smirked and crossed his arms, leaning against the side of the sarcophagus. Guess that makes me royalty now, huh? Lyra rolled her eyes with a smile. You wish. The mood, for the first time since entering the dungeon, lightened. Tension drained from their shoulders. The kind of relief that only came after surviving the impossible. Serena tilted her head, still watching Inigo. Seriously though, you did things I can't explain. Magic with no source glyphs. Weapons that defy mana logic. You weren't the first to react. You're something else, all right, Alira murmured. You saved all our lives today. I thought I'd seen strong adventurers before, but that? She glanced back at the crater left by the howitzer. That was war magic. Something from another era. Serena gave Inigo a curious look. So, are you ever going to explain where you learned to fight like that? No, I'd like to keep it a secret. Now let's get out of here and go back. The sun had already begun its descent by the time they finally emerged from the dungeon's mouth, weary but alive. The fresh air hit them like a blessing, cool, sweet, and utterly free of sulfur and blood. Inigo was the first to step out, Wheeler trailing obediently behind him. The others followed in silence, the weight of their victory and their loot beginning to settle in. Feels like we've been down there for days, Lyra muttered, squinting at the sky. Because we have, Serena replied, slinging her cloak over one shoulder. 3 full days by my count. Alira leaned on her staff, her ribs still sore despite healing magic. Worth it, though. They made their way down the forested path toward Eldritha's city gates, taking the less crowded route that wound behind the cliffs. None of them were in the mood for onlookers or crowds. Inigo had already packed the gold and treasures into his system's storage, opting not to risk a cart full of ancient riches rolling openly through town. When they arrived at the Adventurers Guild, the receptionist nearly choked on her tea. You're back. Elise blurted out. Everyone thought you were, well. She looked them over, burnt clothes, bandages, tired eyes. Dead. Inigo just smiled. Not yet. The lobby filled with whispers as more adventurers noticed them. A silver-ranked team from the back table stood up, clearly surprised. Lyra waved at them as they passed. You can all relax. The demon's toast. Wait, what demon? Another adventurer asked, wide-eyed. Don't worry about it, Inigo replied. Just update our quest record. We'll be filing a completion report. Inside the guildmaster's office, they were ushered in quickly, where the guildmaster, Thorn, was working through a pile of paperworks until he was interrupted and saw the familiar figures. He folded his arms, eyeing them. Seeing you in this establishment meant that you have completed the job? Alira nodded. It's done. The demon guardian was annihilated. We recovered 4 sealed chests and a sealed sarcophagus containing ceremonial treasures and pre-empire coins. Serena added, there were no cursed residues. I personally checked. Thorn grunted, clearly impressed but trying not to show it. Well then, let's see the loot. Inigo summoned a few samples, 1 coin, 1 artifact and a palm-sized gold bar, onto the table. Thorn whistled low. That's the real deal. We'll have to get an appraiser, but this'll count far beyond any standard quest reward. He pulled out a thick ledger and scribbled rapidly. You'll be issued with the rewards as stated from the contract, plus a 5% recovery tax on the treasure if converted here. We won't be converting it through the guild, Alira said, stepping forward. My family runs the Arkwell banking syndicate. We can liquidate and verify the treasure through them. Thorn raised an eyebrow. Well, damn. I knew the name Arkwell sounded familiar. Alira smiled faintly. We'll cover the report and cut the guild its percentage. That'll work. He stamped their quest sheets with a heavy seal. Official completion. Rank adjustments will be processed within the week. Serena and Alira, expect promotion to silver. Lyra, you're already gold. Inigo tilted his head. And me? Throne smirked. You're a walking war crime, Velasquez. You're not being promoted, you're being studied. That got a laugh from everyone. They stepped out of the office moments later, paperwork in hand, and the guild began to buzz again. Eyes followed Inigo, not with suspicion but awe. By the time they left the guild hall, a courier from the Arkwell Bank had already arrived. Alira passed him a folded note with an embossed sigil, and he bowed deeply before rushing off. I sent word ahead, she explained. We'll have a private room to evaluate and convert everything by tonight. Efficient, Inigo said. I like that. They took a carriage to Arkwell's headquarters located in a place full of high-arched buildings and enchanted lampposts. Once they arrived, Inigo saw it. It stood like a cathedral made of marble and silver, its entrance guarded by armored knights with runed halberds. Inside they were led to a private vault chamber. Appraisers, dressed in navy blue robes with monocles enchanted for material analysis, gathered around the display tables as Inigo summoned the loot one item at a time. It took hours. Gold coins were tested, weighed, and catalogued. The magical tomes were immediately marked for archival consultation, their origins tracing back over 400 years. The artifact circlet alone fetched a base valuation of 15,000 gold. When it was all done, a final summary scroll was placed on the table. Alira read it aloud. Total treasure valuation, 213,700 gold pieces. Less Arkwell's commission and appraiser's fee, 186,200 remains. Lyra's jaw slackened. We're rich. Serena blinked. I don't even know what to do with that kind of money. Alira looked to Inigo. You're the leader. How do you want to split it? He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. Even four-way split. You all risked your lives. I just had the fancy cannon. You had everything, Serena muttered. Still, he said firmly. Equal. They all nodded in agreement. The transfer was done discreetly, each member given a private storage ledger enchanted to hold up to 100,000 in liquid credit, redeemable anywhere under the Arkwell system. A discreet fortune. As the evening fell and the group stood outside the bank, Alira turned to Inigo. Thank you, she said sincerely. Not just for the gold. For saving us. He shrugged. I didn't want to carry your corpses out of there. Lyra elbowed him. That's how you say thank you? He grinned. That was me being polite. They all laughed again, lighter this time, freer. The horrors of the dungeon were behind them. Now the future felt wide open. So what now? Serena asked. A vacation? I'll be setting up the shop tomorrow, Inigo said. We've still got a business to run. Lyra raised an eyebrow. You mean, after all that you're going back to flipping burgers? He smirked. Not just burgers. I've got plans. Big ones. Serena nodded with gleaming eyes. I will visit your shop tomorrow. Same, Alira added. Very well, I'll see the four of you in my restaurants. Food's on me, so no need to pay me a dime. Not that you are going to need it.